On this episode of the Wise Counsel Project, we conclude our interview with Jeff Henderson, lead pastor at North Point Ministries, Gwinnett Church. Join us as Jeff provides wise counsel to men and women of faith.
One of the things I've been taught over the years is to look at what your plan might be or what your goals might be 2 minutes a day. And you think, that's not a big deal. It's actually an extraordinary deal, because it just if you can do that in the morning, it reorients your whole mind to, what am I supposed to do today? And did I do anything today? Or am I going to do anything today that will put me toward my goal? And I just don't want to breeze through life. I want to be intentional as I can.
You know, one resolution I hear from a lot of people is, I want to find my dream job in 2015.
Right.
From college students that are going to be graduating at the end of the spring, beginning of the summer, from people that are in jobs they're not really happy in.
Right.
What are your thoughts on giving advice to people that are looking for this, quote, dream job?
Yeah, it's a great question. If you look at all the research, Gary, whether it's Gallup or anything, the survey on work satisfaction is pretty bleak. People are grateful that they have a job if they have a job, but around 80% are deeply dissatisfied with their work. So the other figure, too, is that we're going to spend over half of our lives at work. So if you put those two together, we're going to spend over half of our lives at work, and 80% of us are deeply dissatisfied. And I think the question we have to ask ourselves is, are we okay with that?
Well, you can look around the room and see why at times I'm not really satisfied.
I think these are great guys.
Yeah, they are.
I think Adam and Bert are great. So I think that's a question we have to say, are we okay with that? And then maybe a larger question is, do we think God's okay with that?
Yeah, well, what is the biblical perspective on work?
Well, I think if you ask anyone, what's the purpose of work? I think you would get a variety of questions. Well, I got to pay the bills. Yeah, that's true. I got to pay taxes. Unfortunately, that's true. Or I want to have purpose. I want to feel like I'm a success, or I don't compare myself to, when I go to high school reunions. That's pretty much what high school reunions are, right? Where do you work and what have you done? That kind of a thing. And all that's good. I'm not saying any of that's good and we got to pay the bills, and I'm not advocating we don't pay the bills. None of that's the reason why we work, though. It's not the biblical reason for work. And many people think that work is a curse, that when sin entered the world, God said, you're going to work and it's going to be a curse by the sweat of your brow. And that's where they think that's the first time work shows up in the Bible.
Right.
That's the second time work shows up in the Bible. The first time, before the fall, God gave Adam an idea and said, I want you to work the land. I want you to work the garden. So work was given not as a curse. Work was given as a gift, as a blessing. And when everything was perfect, that's when God said, I got a great idea. I'm going to give you something that's going to be a blessing to your life. So for many people, that blessing has become a curse. And we see that. I saw that in the grocery store early today. I laid behind the counter and I just could tell she's not happy here. Mm-hmm. Part of that's the leadership of that grocery store, quite honestly. But part of it might be the fact that she might not understand that there actually is purpose in her work. And I hear a lot of times from people that would say, I'm grateful I have a job. I just wish my job had purpose. And that statement in and of itself, I think, illustrates the fact that for many people, they don't understand the biblical viewpoint of work. Because if you understand the biblical viewpoint of work, there is no such thing as a job without purpose. Mm-hmm. It doesn't exist.
Have you read the book With by Skye Jethani?
I've heard of it. I've not read it.
Great book. And in there he talks about the dissatisfaction that a lot of people have in their employment. And they think that for their life to have any kind of purpose, they need to go into full-time ministry.
Right.
That's where I've got to devote my energies and my focus. They're trying to live the life for God instead of a life with God.
Right.
Constantly in communion and find the satisfaction there. What advice would you give to somebody that's out there thinking, hey, I'm going to find my purpose in life by going into full-time ministry?
Mm-hmm. I've heard that a lot. The question I get is, tell me about your decision to go into full-time ministry. And I understand and appreciate the question, but from my perspective, I became a Christian when I was 10. Mm-hmm. And I worked from high school on, and I was already in full-time ministry. Right. I don't know do you remember your first job in high school?
I worked as a bagger.
There you go. Absolutely. I worked as a busboy at Peachtree World of Tennis in Norcross, which I think is a Lifetime Fitness now. I was in full-time ministry, and I didn't go to seminary for that, but I was a Christian at the time. So that doesn't necessarily mean you go around and you hand Bible verses out. I think the way we work, with our attitude, how we serve, the integrity, We say it, Andy often says at North Point, we want people to go, I may not believe in all this, that Christians believe, but I sure want to hire them if I'm a businesswoman or businessman, because those people know how to work. They're incredible attitudes. They're honest. They're full of integrity. And in that, the way I say it, Gary, is that the purpose of your life at work is to show that God's at work in your life. That's the purpose of your life at work. And you can start that today at the next shift that you have at the grocery store, at the law firm, at the restaurant, or whether it's at a church. Now, that's not to say that you don't have some specific gifts that you can use. I'm not smart enough to be a lawyer. I'm not. So this would not be the right field for me. I don't have a voice to sing. So, those folks in the early episodes of American Idol who said that, it's God's will for me to be here, and the rest of America says, no, it's not God's will. You've misinterpreted that. So I think there are some skill sets, and I'm not saying we don't lean into that. In fact, the way I say it is God's thumbprints on you are clues about his plans for you. So the more you understand God's gifting, the more you're going to understand his purpose and plan. So there is a pathway for that. But you don't have to wait on that. You can start to understand God's purpose today by treating each other the way that we would want to be treated. And I feel like as Christ followers, excellence is important. We should not be lazy. We should do our very, 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 very best. And I think that's really important. So if you could understand what are your skill sets, and there's all kinds of books now. Discover your strengths. You could, one of the things I did years ago is I just simply emailed 7 friends and said, "Can you tell me what you think I'm good at?" And
are they still your friends now?
Yeah, absolutely. It was short responses. But what happened is what happens is your strengths come easy to you, and so since it becomes easy to you, you just think it's easy for everyone. So if you can get up and give a talk, you just think everybody can do this. No, not everybody. Right. Most people are scared of death and giving a talk. So if you don't know what your strengths are, there's some opportunities that God probably wants to tap into because he's put his thumbprint on you. So it's not egotistical to try to find that out. It's actually great stewardship. All of that said, though, you don't need to, unless God wants you to, you don't need to go to the quote-unquote mission field to be doing God's work.
Yeah, every day is an opportunity for us to reflect Christ.
God didn't tell Adam, I'm going to give you this work, so I want you to be a pastor. Yeah. No, he said, go work the garden. He was a gardener. So that was holy, honorable work.
For those that do feel like it's God's calling and he doesn't have the wrong number,
right?
That they are being led to do work within the church, what advice would you give to them?
Well, your dad may have told you this. My dad said, if you can do anything else and be completely satisfied with it, go do that. Mm-hmm. And if that's the case, then it's probably not what you need to do. Yeah. And so I did that for 21 years. I went and started out with the Braves and went into marketing. And long story short, I won't bore you with, but we attended North Point Community Church, and God just captured our hearts with the vision of that church. And I had promised myself I would never, ever, ever, never, ever work at a church as a preacher's kid.
And people just don't have any understanding, unless they've grown up in that environment, how hard the ministers work. It's not just a Sunday job. It's nonstop.
Oh no, it's tough. And both of us, you moved around a little bit more than I did, but you know what it's like, kind of living in a small town fishbowl. Mm-hmm. And you're I remember being introduced in the 3rd grade. This is the preacher's son.
Yeah.
Let's throw him the ball and see how tough he is. So I was playing tackle the man with a football. Everybody wanted to tackle me because why did they want to beat up the preacher's kid?
Well, I learned about the 5th Amendment long before everybody else did. I had the right to remain silent, and I did.
You did. Yeah. Well, you were smart. But I think if there's this sense that there's a problem that you've been called to solve, and there's a passion in your heart. Our pastor Andy Stanley says, "Pay attention to what breaks your heart." Mm-hmm. And for us, there was just so many people in Atlanta that did not know who Jesus is. And you and I grew up knowing about that every day.
Yeah.
And yet, as we began to get involved at North Point, we began to encounter people who didn't know and have the furthest clue about any of this. And I thought, oh my goodness, you live next door to me, and or you're in the neighborhood or down the road, that just began to break our heart so much that the next thing I know, I'm the lead pastor at Buckhead Church, and here we go. So, but I don't know how all of that necessarily started, other than our hearts were just broken to try to reach more people. And we almost felt like it would be bad stewardship. Both Wendy and I grew up in a Christian home. To be in this environment and to be in this gigantic city, in this very important county in Gwinnett, with thousands upon thousands of people who don't know Jesus, and here's an organization, a church, that's their mission. And then when they said, will you help lead this? We both felt like this is what we ought to do. And as I never wanted to leave Chick-fil-A. I was sports marketing. I love sports. So I had other than Truett and Dan and the Cathy family, I had the best job in the company. But when I caught a vision of this, it actually kind of ruined anything else.
Yeah.
And I thought, I've got to do this. So I think trying to find that, and the other thing, finally, I'll be real quick. If for someone that wants to be involved in the church, the best thing you can do is start serving.
Volunteer.
And start serving in the nursery. Start serving as a greeter. Start serving in the parking lot, and see what that does.
Right.
It has these great volunteer opportunities that you can keep your job and you can serve, and that'll help, I think, tell you whether you want to keep toward that road.
Right. You found that job that you're passionate about. You got to be careful, though. The biblical mandate is we have to have that day of rest. Mm-hmm. And I know, as I said, for ministers, it's nonstop. It's nonstop. How are you able to find that time? How are you able to make sure you don't get the burnout?
Well, I don't think it's a mistake that God talks about rest, and I feel like I do a pretty good job, honestly, of keeping a Sabbath. Now, my Sabbath is not on Sunday. Mm-hmm. My Sabbath is on Friday, and I try to do a really good job of getting away and being restful, because I feel like the best thing I can do for the church is to provide them a replenished and rested Jeff. Mm-hmm. And if not, if I fall prey to this thinking that it's all about me and I got to work, at some point, pride and arrogance creeps up. Because the reality is, Gwinnett Church can run without me. And if I think it can't, then it's going to harm me. It's eventually going to harm my family. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing: I have to say no. I have to say these words. It's difficult for me to say because I'm a people pleaser.
Yeah.
I can't be at that event. I can't go do that because I'm going to be at home with my kids. And there's some trade-offs, and there's some different seasons. As you well know, we're about to be into a very busy season, and so about to move into this brand new church. But at some point, when that season begins to settle down a little bit, I've got to get back into a rhythm. And God talks a lot about a rhythm and a pattern. And he talks about these work 6 days and then find that Sabbath. And so I think getting into that routine and having a sustainable pace always leads to a better place in life.
And it's such a difficult thing to say no, because you feel like you're letting people down. But I'm like you. I've got to be very protective of my family time. Looking at the stats, the profession with the highest incidence of divorce, alcoholism, suicide, the legal arena, attorneys, followed closely by doctors and the clergy came in there. I pulled out some stats. 25% don't know where to turn when they have a family or personal conflict or issue. 33% felt burnout within their first year of ministry. 45% said they experienced depression or burnout to the extent they need to take a leave of absence from the ministry. It can wear on you unless you are protective of your time, your family time.
Mm-hmm. And I think rest is an undervalued and underappreciated aspect. And rest doesn't mean you're lazy. It's literally rejuvenating and recharging your battery. The example I get is if you've ever done a crossword puzzle and you get stuck on a word, if you'll go outside and walk around for about 2 minutes and come right back and sit down, you'll not only get that word, you'll get 5 other words. What you've done is you've put your brain at rest. And that's just a small example to say, if that's just a 2-minute or 5-minute exercise that you can come in and think differently and think better, then imagine what you can do if you gave yourself a day. And I'm all for vacations. I believe in vacations. I love vacations. But I think vacations, a week vacation, are a fallacy. Thinking that, okay, I'm going to just burn myself out for 6 months. I'm going to go on a 10-day vacation, and then I'm going to come back. I think that's a fallacy. I mean, I'm saying go on the 10-day vacation,
right.
But if you don't have a rhythm of every 7 days, which that's what God is teaching us, get into more frequent rhythm. If you don't do that, I just don't think you're the exception to the rule. That kind of pace will catch up with you.
Let's talk about Gwinnett Church. Anyone walking around the Gwinnett County area, they're going to see the For Gwinnett T-shirts, the For Gwinnett bumper stickers, the For Gwinnett signs on Peachtree Industrial. What does For Gwinnett mean?
Well, when we started the church, part of our vision is to create a church unchurched people love to attend, and that's our heartbeat. And Gwinnett has amazing churches, but we discovered that there are 280,000 people just in our county alone that don't go to church.
Wow.
And that's a staggering number. And not only that, Gwinnett County has so many high school students. I read recently in the Atlanta Journal that AJC that they counted the top 10 high schools in the state of Georgia, eight of which are in Gwinnett County.
That's almost 80%.
Yeah. And that's not even to mention like schools like North Gwinnett and Buford and Peachtree Ridge, which are right around us. So we just looked at that and thought, wow, then why don't 200? I mean, it's not about attending church, but the church, when I believe, should be irresistible because it represents an irresistible Savior. So why do 280,000 people in this county alone basically say no? And so we, long story short, decided that many people are more familiar with what the church is against rather than what the church is for. And so we want to be known for what we're for. And we're for Gwinnett kids, and we're for Gwinnett families, and we're for Gwinnett businesses like you, and we're for Gwinnett schools. We just want to be a value add to the community. And we want to create some common ground to say, we live here. This is our community. I mean, for crying out loud, I went to high school here.
Yeah.
So I love Gwinnett. So whether you believe in any of this stuff that we believe, I think the thing that you can't agree with is you're probably for Gwinnett as well. And so we want to just create some common language. And it's not just a language or marketing campaign. We've actually done things in the community. Not only just showed up to support events, but given money away to great Gwinnett organizations. But at the end of the day, the reason we want to do that is because we believe not only are we for Gwinnett, God's for Gwinnett as well. That the most famous Bible verse of all starts with the word for. For God so loved the world. And so it's a very positive, unifying message, and we just feel like it's the greatest message ever. And so so that's really part of our message. And so when the sign on at our building, instead of saying coming soon, we've had a sign out there that says just hashtag for Gwinnett. And it's been fun to just kind of eavesdrop in on social media to see what people are saying. Some people think it's a school. Some people think it's a museum. Some people think it's a real estate development. And but as we go out into the community and wear our For Gwinnett shirts, it's conversation starters. And we've just had some incredible conversations with people who've said, "Oh wow, you mean God might be for me?"
Yeah.
And there's a group of people that might be for me as well. And so that's what all that is about. We're for this community. And I tell church leaders, if you close up shop one day, and you will, every church will come to an end at some point. When that day comes, you at least want the mayor of the town or the people of the county or whatever to come knocking on your door, say, no, you can't close down. If you close down, what are we going to do? And so if that's where we're going, and we're a very young church, 2-3 years old. So that's our hope, and that's our dream.
And if people are looking for a church home or a new church home, what can they expect when they walk in the doors?
Well, I hope they'll feel very welcomed, and they're going to realize that we're expecting them. And one of the things we say is every Sunday someone's first Sunday. And we want them to feel like they're part of this community instantly. But it's not just about Sunday. Our ultimate goal is to get people back to our earlier conversation about Christmas time. We want to get people into community groups that meet every week in homes around the county. In
circles instead of rows.
Circles instead of rows. We think that's where deeper conversations can happen. We believe Sunday is a step, we call it a foyer. But ultimately, we want you in the kitchen, breaking bread with people that you're doing life with. That's ultimately where we want you. And if we have a pretty good system that we can get you into a community group And in that is the context we believe that life change can really happen.
And where can people go to learn more about Gwinnett Church?
They can just follow us on Facebook at Gwinnett Church, or Twitter, Instagram, or GwinnettChurch.org. And I would say, Gary, Gwinnett County has incredible churches. We're actually in a church right now, Crosspoint Church in Duluth, and they're hosting us on Sunday nights, have for the last 2 years. So the vision of Dr. Merritt, James Merritt, the pastor there, and their church to allow us to use their facility while we're in these early days, that's the kind of partnership. So whether it's, Crosspoint, 12 Stone, Perimeter Church, just go on and on and on. Incredible churches. That said, we all have a lot of work to do. We got 280,000 people to reach.
Well, we love Gwinnett Church. It's obviously a church that my family and I attend, and love what you and Andy are doing there. And thank you for taking the time to be with us here on the Wise Counsel Project.
Thanks, Gary. I'm a big fan of yours, and thanks for doing this.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Wise Counsel Project. If you enjoyed it, please consider rating us on iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher Radio. And for more information about the Wise Counsel Project, visit us on the web, wisecounselproject.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at Gary Martin Hayes. Thanks for listening, and God bless.